The fluorescent lights above the mat buzzed faintly, casting a pale sheen over the polished hardwood and the dense blue padding. The dojo was alive with the shuffling of feet, the thump of mitts, and the low murmur of pre-sparring chatter. At the far end, the instructors leaned against the wall, arms folded, eyes half-lidded but sharp, scanning the class with practiced calm. It was sparring day, and the atmosphere hummed with anticipation. He stood tall near the center, rolling his shoulders with the casual arrogance of someone who had been here long enough to feel ownership over the space. Alex, brown belt, 2 years in, favored by the head instructor for his precision and showmanship. His reputation was as solid as his roundhouse kick, fast, reliable, just showy enough. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on her. Jade had arrived only 6 months ago. She rarely spoke, arrived early, stretched with intent, and left as soon as class ended. No belt, she had transferred in, and her previous rank was still under review. Most assumed she had trained somewhere obscure or non-traditional. But anyone paying attention knew her movements were clean, unnaturally so. She didn't bounce like the others, she flowed. She wasn't flashy. She was exact. "Pair up," called the instructor, voice cutting clean through the buzz. Bodies shifted. Alex's gaze lingered on her a moment longer. Then he smiled and approached. "You want to go around?" he asked, tapping his gloves together. Jade looked up. Her expression was unreadable. Light contact. He grinned, already bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Whatever you're comfortable with." She nodded once and followed him to the center mat. The other students gave them space. Some chuckled quietly. He had 20 pounds on her and at least a foot in height. From the sidelines, someone muttered, "David and Goliath." Another added, "Goliath with a six-pack." They bowed, touched gloves. From the first second, Alex took the lead. He jabbed lightly, testing. She moved her head just enough to avoid each one, her feet gliding rather than stepping. He smiled wider. She was quick. He liked quick. He threw a low kick to the thigh, not hard but stinging. She didn't flinch. The next exchange was faster. He threw a combination: jab, cross, hook. Her guard absorbed most of it, but he felt the resistance. Still, she hadn't thrown a single strike. He took that as a green light. "You good?" he asked between breaths. She nodded, unreadable. He surged forward with a looping overhand, and this time she stepped inside it. Her elbow touched his chest briefly, a threat more than a strike, and his balance shifted. For a moment, he was off-center, then she was gone again, circling left. Now he was breathing heavier. From the side, one of the instructors raised a brow. A few students had stopped their own drills to watch. The match was still friendly, but the air had sharpened. Something was tilting off balance. Alex decided to pick up the pace. He fired a flurry, more aggressive this time, a snap kick to the ribs, then a spinning back fist that missed narrowly. She pivoted, countered with a low kick that caught him on the calf. Not hard. Precise. A touch of control that irritated him more than it should have. He grinned wider, but his eyes lost some of their warmth. "All right," he muttered, and the next jab was faster, tighter, pushing her back. Still, she didn't hit back. Not really. She tapped, redirected, moved. Like she was studying him. He hated being studied. He feinted a left, drove a right cross toward her shoulder. She ducked, and his glove grazed the top of her headgear. Close, but not enough. He stepped in, pushing the pace, trying to trap her against the mat's edge. Her back hit the boundary line, and for a moment, she paused. Their eyes met. He didn't see anger in her. Or fear. He saw calculation. Then she moved. A quick pivot off her back foot, a sweep at his ankle. He stumbled. Not enough to fall, but enough to lose rhythm. She pressed forward for the first time, tapping his side with a left hook, then retreating before he could answer. The room had gone quiet. He adjusted his gloves, shook his head, and forced a laugh. "You're good," he said, loud enough for others to hear. She said nothing. They reset. Gloves touched. The space between them felt narrower now, more focused. His confidence faltered for a breath, Just one, but he masked it with motion, bouncing, circling. He faked a kick, stepped into a clinch.
She didn't resist.
Instead, she turned with it, redirected his energy. His balance shifted. She hooked an arm behind his elbow. Just enough to feel. He pulled away, the clinch breaking. That moment changed something. The tension wasn't in the sparring anymore. It had moved into the silence between strikes, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes, the way she stopped pulling her movements quite so early. From the sidelines, the head instructor took a step forward. Alex moved in again, too fast this time, a hard right that she parried. He pushed, trying to impose, trying to reset the terms. She slipped under, angled her body, grabbed his wrist. Careful, the assistant instructor called, voice neutral. Neither of them heard. The grip tightened. She twisted just slightly, and Alex tensed. She didn't follow through. Just let him feel the potential. He yanked his arm back. "What's your deal?" he asked lower now. She tilted her head. "You said whatever I was comfortable with." The instructor's voice cut across the room. "Last 30 seconds. Make it clean." They faced each other once more. He was breathing heavier now. She was not. There was no bow this time. No smile. Only motion. The second round began with no ceremony. No touch of gloves. No nod of acknowledgement. Just breath and tension, coiled between them like a drawn wire. Alex moved first, circling tighter this time, his footwork sharper, more deliberate. Gone was the easy rhythm from earlier. Now, every motion carried weight, a need to reassert control. His jaw was set, his shoulders tight, the playful edge in his eyes replaced by something harder, something less aware. Jade watched him with a stillness that was not hesitation but calculation. Her stance had shifted subtly, knees more bent, center lowered. She mirrored his pacing, but didn't chase him. She let him create the momentum. He threw a low kick again, faster than before. She checked it with her shin, the slap of impact cracking in the quiet room.
She didn't blink.
Frustration bubbled under Alex's skin. The audience wasn't cheering, wasn't whispering jokes anymore. The instructors weren't smiling. Eyes were on him, watching, evaluating, waiting to see if the favored student would rise or stumble. He darted forward, feinted with a jab, then shot for a body lock, his first attempt at a takedown. Jade pivoted, her body slipping around his grasp, but he adjusted quickly and caught her around the waist. For a moment, he thought he had her. Then her hips turned inside his base, her arm looped under his shoulder, and the balance he'd relied on betrayed him. They fell, but not the way he intended. She didn't slam him. She guided him down, controlling the descent like a patient instructor with an overeager student. His back hit the mat with a thud, and she landed beside him, immediately transitioning to a side position. He tried to scramble, bridge, twist, anything, but her knee pinned his arm before he could move. The gym was silent except for the sound of fabric shifting against fabric. Alex grunted, twisting harder, and felt her shift her weight. He brought his left arm up, trying to buck her off. She read it instantly. In one smooth, clinical movement, she rotated, swung her leg over his chest, and isolated his right arm. His wrist trapped, elbow pointed skyward, knees pinching around his shoulder. She had him in an arm bar before he knew it. "Tap," someone whispered from the edge of the mat. Alex grimaced, struggling, his hand fluttering near her thigh. He tried to pull back, to muscle his way out, but her grip was unyielding. There was a beat, a heartbeat's worth of time, where he could have signaled. But he didn't. Maybe he didn't believe she'd go through with it. Maybe he thought she'd hold back, like everyone else had. Maybe pride refused to let his hand touch down.
So she did what the technique demanded.
Her hips arched upward, applying pressure with precise leverage. The snap was not loud, but unmistakable, a dry, brittle crack that sliced through the stillness like a gunshot muffled in cloth. His scream came a half-second later, raw and primal. She released instantly. Alex curled inward, clutching his arm, the gloves now useless. His forearm hung wrong, loose where it should be rigid, his elbow no longer part of the same conversation. The room erupted in motion. One instructor rushed forward. A pair of students stood frozen. Another fumbled with a phone, dialing. Jade stepped back, hands raised, breathing steady. No victory in her posture. No fear either. Just quiet detachment, as if the outcome had been inevitable. The instructor knelt beside Alex, assessing the damage, muttering to someone to grab ice. Alex hissed through clenched teeth, eyes squeezed shut. His pride had left the mat before he did. Jade crouched, just outside the circle of concern, and said softly, "I didn't want to hurt you." He didn't respond. The assistant instructor glanced at her, unreadable. Did he tap? She shook her head. He tried to muscle out. That was answer enough. Alex was helped to his feet, his arms supported awkwardly by two others. His face was pale, jaw clenched in a war between pain and shame. He didn't look at her. Accidents happen, the instructor said to no one in particular, but the message was aimed at everyone. That's why we tap. Jade's expression didn't change. She bowed, not to Alex, but to the room, then stepped away from the circle of onlookers. Some parted instinctively, not knowing whether to offer sympathy or space. As she moved to the far end of the mat, she caught the eyes of the head instructor. He didn't speak, only held her gaze for a moment too long before looking away. The clock on the wall ticked past the hour unnoticed. No one called for the next bar. The mat had changed. The dojo emptied slowly, in murmurs and sidelong glances. No one spoke directly to Jade, but they looked curious, cautious, as though proximity might reveal a secret they weren't sure they wanted to know. She remained seated on the edge of the mat, tying and untying the laces of her gear with a methodical calm. Her breathing had long returned to normal. Her knuckles were still red. Alex had left quickly, flanked by instructors and a classmate on each side. Someone carried his bag. His injured arm was bound in a makeshift sling, and though his mouth was set in a hard line, his eyes betrayed him, wet with pain, confused and hollow. He didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind him, and the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was uncertain. From the far corner, the assistant instructor crossed the room and crouched beside her. "You all right?" Jade nodded, not lifting her eyes. "Yes." He studied her for a moment, then sat down beside her, elbows resting on his knees. That was clean technique. No aggression. She didn't respond. He continued, quieter now. "Still, it's going to be talked about." Jade finally looked up. "I didn't want it to go that far." "I know, but you didn't hold back." He didn't tap. "That's true." Silence returned between them, heavier than before. She rose without speaking, gathered her bag, and offered a slight bow. The assistant nodded in return but said nothing more. Outside, the night had cooled. Streetlights blinked to life, casting long, pale streaks over the pavement. She walked slowly, each step measured. Her body ached from tension more than exertion. The fight hadn't cost her in bruises, but something else had shifted. Some internal gear realigned. Not broken. Not bent. Just different. She replayed the moment in her head, not the break, not the scream, but the hesitation before it. The flicker of disbelief in Alex's eyes. The arrogance that masked his refusal to yield. She had waited. She had left space. And he had gambled that she wouldn't follow through. He hadn't known what she was capable of. Few ever did. Jade walked past a darkened storefront and caught her reflection in the glass. Small, slight, calm. It was a familiar face, but the eyes belonged to someone else now. Not a stranger. Just someone no longer apologizing. The next morning, the dojo buzzed louder than usual. Some of the energy was nervous, some excited. The injury had spread through the student group like wildfire. Stories varied. In one, she'd snapped his arm without warning. In another, he had taunted her. The truth hung somewhere in the air between rumor and fact, but no one dared ask her. Alex didn't return. Not that day. Not that week. She trained in silence, partnered with whoever didn't hesitate. Some did. Others took the chance, moved more carefully, tapped earlier, spoke with forced friendliness. She responded only when needed. Her focus remained precise, sharp. The head instructor observed her more often now, not in disapproval, more like reevaluation. He watched her forms, her transitions, her attention to technique. When he finally approached her after class one night, it was with a folded GI in his hands. "You're still unranked," he said. "That's an oversight. It's clear now." She accepted the GI without a word, bowing slightly. It didn't feel like a reward. It felt like acknowledgement, a correction of something long ignored. That evening, as she folded the new uniform neatly at home, Jade sat with the silence again. It didn't press down like it used to. It simply existed. Alex, somewhere, was nursing pain he didn't know how to name. His ego had been struck as surely as his elbow, and she knew, without bitterness, that it would be a long road back for him, if he came back at all. But he had learned something. Maybe not yet, maybe not clearly, but eventually, he would face the mirror and realize the truth wasn't that she had hurt him. It was that he hadn't believed she could. She hadn't lost control. She had shown him the price of underestimating others, of not listening, of mistaking quiet for weakness. Her choices weren't free of consequence. They never were. But she had chosen clarity over comfort. And the dojo would remember.